Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. If you're brand new here, I'm FiddlinJonny. This is my fiddle channel and magic product review. And before we get into any magic product review, of course we do a quick fiddle tune. And I'm doing a tune today that I'd like to think fits this release, and that it's sort of a soft, slow, pretty tune, which I think really fits this release really well. All right, here we go. There we go, a little tune about the Tennessee Waltz, if you're not familiar with the tune. Anyway, hey, I'm glad that you're all here, because every now and then a release comes out that I want people to know about. And this is really one of them. It's Chris Philpott's Feel Better. Once in a while a trick comes out that fits the time really well, and I feel like this is one of those releases. Anyway, before I gab on too long, stick around. We'll get right into it. Okay, let's talk about Feel Better by Chris Philpott. Now, normally, I go through my list of what's the effect, what's in the box, let's talk about the tutorial, pros and cons, the skill level, all that sort of stuff. And I've created that here on my little sheet in front of me, but I think I just want to ditch it and just chat with you guys about this effect. And I'm going to give away the ending right away. I loved this release, or loved this release. I don't need to use past tense. I really do like this effect. I feel like every now and then an effect comes out that meets the perfect moment in time. And I think Chris has done that with Feel Better. It's a nice acknowledgement of that everyone has been through a tough time during the pandemic over the last 3 years, and that everyone has experienced some level of trauma or negative emotions. And that this is sort of a nice way to acknowledge that people have been through a rough time, and has a wonderful, very positive, forward-looking approach, which I really appreciated. I thought it was really nice. For me personally, I looked at this and went immediately, oh, this is something that I will use, that I really like, and it fits my character really well. Not everyone's gonna like it, just to be super clear. It is way in some people's alleys, but it is not for everybody. So I'll go through some of it and you'll discover whether it's a right fit for you or not. And let me start off a little bit by, if folks are not familiar with who Chris Philpott is, he's a creator, been around for a long time. He's definitely a legend in this business. I think for me, when he came out with the 100th Monkey principle, there was so much buzz about it at the time. And if you're not familiar with the 100th Monkey principle, which Chris Philpott came out with, and I can't remember how long ago it came out. It must be at least what feels like about a decade ago. But it's one of those things that, like, there's just ripples within the magic and mentalism community about, oh, here's something that's really new, we haven't seen before, and kind of changes things moving forward. And that principle is used in this release. So if you're not familiar with the 100th Monkey, just be aware of sort of that history there with it. If you're familiar with the 100th Monkey, then you'll know and understand sort of how this works on this release. What else do I want to say about that? Well, let's talk a little bit about what the effect is. And I'll tell you one of the reasons I like this. If you've been a long time follower on this channel, you know that I am actually not just a magician, but I'm also a therapist. I'm a trained therapist. I've had a private practice off and on over the years. I currently don't have a practice, but I've worked as a therapist. I'm a trained therapist. And therefore it fits into my wheelhouse really well, because I can speak to it from an authentic place in doing the presentation. Because you're going to get these cards, and these cards are described as like, these are cards that therapists use to help people identify what their emotions are and to help them move forward. Would be a typical frame that's used. For me, that works perfect because it fits me on a personal level really, really well. And the frame is that the spectator is asked to do it in the context of coming out of the pandemic, and that everyone sort of may have had a tough time. It doesn't have to be framed specifically to the pandemic. It can be framed for whatever sort of performance you want to do about when we have negative feelings and maybe certain circumstances, and identifying those emotions and overcoming them. But Chris does it in the context of COVID and coming out of the pandemic. And I'll say for folks who roll their eyes and feel like COVID is so loaded these days, certainly in the United States, with politics, he's done such a nice job with the framing of this that's so inclusive. It doesn't matter where you are on the political spectrum and how you feel about COVID. It can be performed for any audience. So these are cards that have feelings that are essentially negative feelings on the back side of these. And your spectator is asked to pick a card without you seeing it as the performer that sort of best describes how they may have felt through the pandemic. They're going to hold it close to their chest, and you'll take the remaining cards. And in that process, the cards are marked. So you will be able to know what emotion they have picked. Now, you're not going to go right away, oh, you picked the word depressed. Chris does a great job of saying, let's say you picked depressed, about talking about things that when folks are depressed, in terms of how they might, words that are similar to that, behaviors or actions that would appropriately go for that. It's essentially a warm reading because you already know what they've picked. Similar to a cold reading, you don't have to start off cold. You already know what they're feeling. And you can sort of structure and talk about the feeling that they may have picked and some of the experiences that they may have picked. And ultimately, then you reveal what the word is. So you essentially have got your hit because you know what it is. And you have predicted or been able to sense emotionally what it is that they've picked. You will then say, can I borrow your phone? I'd like to take a picture of you to capture this moment. And if you could hold up the card, and they'll hold up the card, and you'll snap a picture of them. While you're doing this, you'll of course say verbiage around, why don't we think about transformation and moving forward, and what would be the opposite of this word in a positive sense, the direction you would like to go. You'll snap the picture, and then they'll take a look at the picture, and they'll see that the card that they've been holding up, and no matter what it said, it has now changed and is a positive word that they're able to see on the card the whole time, and that they have affected change in the world and have been able to affect things for the positive. And of course you can adjust that framing, but in essence that's what it is. That is the effect. So now I guess I'll sort of go into my traditional stuff. What are you going to get? So you're going to get 42 minutes of tutorial, and it's streaming and downloadable. It's on the Murphy's Magic tutorial platform on there. You're going to get 25 gimmick cards. You're going to get 17 ungimmick cards. You're going to get a key card, or a crib sheet I should say. Since the cards are marked, they're pretty fast and easy to memorize. But if you're not sure, one of the backs of these cards is a crib that you can look at so that you can know what card that they have picked. It took me I don't even think it took me 5 minutes to go through and memorize the stack. So it's pretty easy. You can put it in a stack order as well that works for you. So that's what you're going to get. When I think about the tutorial or the instructions, this is going to be a key point for folks. I feel like some are going to love it and some are not. Maybe I could say that about any tutorial, but on this one, I think it will be driven by your skill level. I think the more experienced you are as a mentalist, it's going to be just fine. No problems. In that 42 minutes, you'll have everything that you need. If you're brand new to mentalism and doing this style of effect, you'll go, I wish I got more. You'll probably be seeking the masterclass on cold readings or warm readings on this. I do think Chris does a nice job for all levels. He'll go through each of the words and talk about how you might frame it and talk about it in the context of folks during the pandemic. So I think it does really well so that you get sort of a nice high level. But if you're new, you may want more, essentially. It's not bad. I'm just saying where you're at in Magic might depend on how much you like the tutorial. Another thing that I like about the tutorial, Chris does the entire tutorial. He does right out of the gate live performances so you can see what it looks like in the real world and him performing it to perfect strangers. He's going to go through the tutorial itself. And if you've ever done a Chris Philpott tutorial, you'll know that he typically does it in his house, sitting at, I think, as a kitchen or dining room table, and he's got his orange curtains behind him. During the pandemic, Chris moved. He's at a different location, but he brought the curtains with him. And if you know what I'm talking about, the curtains behind him, they are bright and colorful and very noticeable. So it was nice. I think Chris was self-deprecating and fun to see that he still has the curtains with him. I think, what else do I want to talk about the tutorial? I don't need to say more other than what I've said. I think it summarizes it pretty well. I will say, let's talk about the principle here, the 100th monkey principle. If you don't know what it is where, in fact, well, let me just show you. This is a card, let's say, that my spectator has picked. When you look at it, I believe the word that you're going to see on here is terrific. When I look at it, I see the word terrible. So what he has done, he has created it so that you can have a spectator see one thing and your audience or you as the performer can see a different word on there. So that's kind of what the 100th monkey principle does. Now it has a different effect on a camera versus not on a camera, if that helps for folks to understand. Distance sometimes will make a difference, and lighting conditions are a big thing. So normally I would talk about the pros and cons. Let me just talk about the principle itself. It's an awesome principle because when you think about it, like if you can have one spectator see one thing and another spectator see something different, think of what you can do with that from a possibility point of view. You do need good lighting conditions, and good lighting conditions means brighter spaces. If you're performing in a darker space where the lighting is dim, it may not be ideal. The brighter the space, the better the effect is in terms of the principle that's used on the cards. So that is something that I think is important. I think for folks where you are able to control your lighting conditions, like in a parlor or stage condition, you're going to maximize how you present this. If you're working in a smaller nightclub where you're working tables and it's a darker lit room, it may not work for you. So just know to keep that in mind. And I can tell you, like, here is the optimal lumens you need in order for this to work. I've been playing around with it and trying to figure out where's that sort of ideal or minimal light that I need in order for it to work properly. So, but you'll pick it up and learn that pretty quickly. But it's something for you, depending on where you perform, something for you to consider in terms of if it is right for you. I talked about that, like, I think warm readings and really building from warm readings into cold reading skills. You can, if you're newer in mentalism, this could be a great jumping off point for you in doing that. Let's talk a little bit in terms of, like, you know, I usually talk about the gimmick. So let me bring some of these up to the screen for you. So the cards, in my opinion, do look like something that a therapist would use. They are marked. The marking on these, in my opinion, are really big. So big that at first they make me uncomfortable. Like, my spectator's going to notice this. That's the sort of thing where the magician, in terms of when you really have it and you're working it, you're like, oh, they never notice it at all. And if they see it, they don't know what the marking means anyway. So, but I'll turn it around for this card in terms of how you might see that word. So, and it might be different based upon the distance from the camera. But I do like them. You get a lot of them. You get a lot of different words that are across the gamut in terms of negative feelings that folks might. So gimmick, good, simple, but need good lighting conditions. Skill level. I don't know if I've ever seen this on the Murphy's Magic site, but the Murphy's Magic site has this listed as no skills required. Boy, do I disagree. Technically, yeah, you don't need any skill because there's no sleights. The cards do the work for you, in essence, in terms of what you need them to do based upon the principle. I actually think this is an intermediate level effect. And I'm going to sound kind of elitist here, maybe a little bit pompous, and I don't feel like, oh, that's not me. But I know that it sounds a little bit like that to me. This is such a great effect, and I think when in the hands of a skilled performer, intermediate and up, it's super powerful. If you're newer in magic, you'll probably still, I wish the tutorial was longer, and you'll find yourself needing to build some muscle and skill and flight time on this sort of a thing. So I think it's more of an intermediate level. And I say it's intermediate level because I just feel like the effect deserves the respect of really good magic and mentalism. So that's sort of the point where I'm coming from. But let's say you're relatively new. I'm not saying you couldn't get it and start performing it right away, but put in the time, put in the practice. And the only way you really honestly get time and practice on this is to sort of do it, quite frankly, to an audience. You can only do so much practicing at home or practicing to your family or friends. You build that muscle by going out and actually performing it. So just so you know, that's where I'm coming from. When I think about like who's going to like this, I think anyone who does parlor work, stage work, mentalism work is going to like this. I think anyone who really loves, who's really great and has good emotional intelligence and like to tap into folks' feelings and play with that in a positive way, I think you're going to like this. You can use it in walk around, but you're probably, or close-up performance, I should say, more so than walk around, in close-up performance, but you're going to want to make sure you have good lighting conditions. All right, let's talk about the cost. It's in the United States, it's $45. I personally think it's a totally fine cost, not a problem whatsoever, but that's what it's going to cost you, and you're going to get these cards that should last you a very long time. All right, that's it from me. If you purchased it, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you're thinking about getting it, let me know. I think this is really an awesome release. It's one of the best I've seen this year, quite frankly. So in large part because it fits me really well. I know that a lot of people, it just won't fit them stylistically. So it feels pretty unique in that respect for me. So, but a great, great effect. All right, that's it. I do want to thank Hocus-Pocus Magic for letting me have this to do a review of this. I would happily spend the $45 or more for this because I feel like, honestly, it's one of my favorite tricks so far this year. So make sure to go to Hocus-Pocus if you're interested in purchasing this effect or any other effect for that matter. All right, make sure that you hit that like and hit that subscribe button, everybody. It's really appreciated if you do that. And thank you so much for being here. I'm FiddlinJonny, and remember to keep fiddling around with your magic. I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.